I want to thank each of you tonight for your comments and things you've shared with us. It's very informative. This time I'll call on Cliff Ogburn, our town manager, to talk to us about Ordinance 2021-0401, establishing and creating Southern Shores Beach Erosion Control and Flood Hurricane Works Municipal Service Districts. Our second look at this.
Thank you. As you well know, the general statute requires you to, before you can enact the ordinance, you have to pass it at 2 meetings before it becomes enacted. But before you take your vote, I wanted to try and take a minute just to kind of explain why we're even talking about municipal service districts in the first place, and why we're putting everybody through this exercise and trying to develop these municipal service districts. And okay, next slide. So as everyone knows, the project we have to generate, our share of the project is 7.82 cents, which means the equivalent of 7.82 cents a year on our tax levy, and that comes out to $1,224,775 a year. Click. Total. That's based on the total project of $14 million. Click it again. That shows you what we have to generate. The town has to come up with $1,224,000 a year for 5 years to pay for this debt. One more time. And that amounts to the 7.82. Okay. The town has to borrow the money to be able to do this project.
Can you hear him all right?
Okay. So the town has to borrow the money to be able to do this project. We don't have $1.2 million otherwise. If you go to the next slide. In January of 20, Andrew and Doug Carter came before you and they gave you a presentation about how financing a beach project works, or the options that you have. So the first one they discussed was a pay-go, and that's what I just described. If you had $1.2 million in the town budget, you'd be able to pay as you go. But because we don't have those funds, we have to borrow the funds. And the first borrowing that they mentioned, click again, is the general obligation bond. Now, what that is, it requires a vote of the registered voters of the town of Southern Shores. And what they essentially would be voting on is whether or not they were willing to raise the taxes on themselves of 7.82 cents to pay for the project. Now, when you obligate your ad valorem tax, it requires a vote of the general public. Go to it pledges, you're voting to pledge your tax dollars. The only way you can do that is with the vote of the people. And again, that's where that 7.82. So if you were to go this route of putting a referendum out there, the general statute changed a couple of years ago that you can only do these on, you can't do them on off-year elections. I think you have to do them on the year that there's a state election or federal election. So there's a timing issue. And then there's just also the question of, are the voters of the town of Southern Shores going to approve 7.82 cents a tax increase? So the installment financing, this is what we did back in 2013, FY 2014 for the canal project. In 2014, the town borrowed $1,547,880 to dredge the canals, and that was phase 2 of a 2-phase project. Phase 1 was done sometime in 2010, 2011, and that was paid for with fund balance $1.5 million. The town was able to do installment financing for that, and the town had to pledge an asset. You couldn't pledge the canal, so the town pledged town hall. That asset was enough to cover the 1.5. And so the town made 2 payments on that loan in the following year, and then the next year, the town paid off that debt with fund balance. That was a short-lived borrowing, and that was installment financing. Okay, the next one. So there's a bit of a difference here with the special assessment bonds, but before I talk about that, I want to talk about special assessments, because in 2017, that's how the town financed the project that was done at Pelican's Watch and 1,500 feet beyond that. And basically then the town served as the bank for that project because it was $1 million project, 500,000 came from the county, 500,000 came from the town. 350,000 of that came from fund balance. And then the property owners were assessed the equivalent of the $150,000 based on their, I believe it was their footage, for 5 years to make up that amount. The reason that worked was because the town was able to pay for the cost up front and then get reimbursed from the special assessment. If you were to borrow the funds, you couldn't upfront the $6 million to pay for the project. If you were to borrow the funds, it would require a special assessment bond. And that would require a petition by 66% of the property owners. But beyond that, when you get to requires a pledge of property included in the assessment, town doesn't have $6.2 million worth of assets to pledge. So that brings us to the reason we're here is the special obligation bonds. The difference, the special obligation bonds, it doesn't require a voter referendum. In the statute, special obligation bonds are listed. The authority to issue special obligation bonds is very limited. It permits a county or municipality to issue a special obligation bond for solid waste, water projects, and wastewater projects. It also allows a municipality to issue special obligation bonds for any project for which a municipality is authorized to create a municipal service district. So in order for us to secure a special obligation bond, to finance a project that we can finance to a municipal service district, you have to have a municipal service district. If you don't have a municipal service district, you don't have a project that qualifies for special obligation bonds. So if you're going to go this route of borrowing the funds, when you whittle it down, this is the avenue that you have to take, minus the other avenues. It requires the municipal service district. Now, the difference being you can establish an MSD and not tax it. Right? You have to have an MSD, but you don't have to tax it because what we're obligating ourselves to, the collateral or the asset that we're pledging in this case, is the occupancy tax and the sales tax. Those are taxes that we don't have any control over. Those are taxes that come to the town that you don't set the rate for those. So if we default, the banks are going to come and take those assets, but we have to be able to pay it back. And so the separate question becomes, how do you go about paying it back? And that's a question of, you're going to have to hammer out, if you choose to pass this tonight, how you structure the repayment in the municipal service district. So I just wanted to hopefully explain that in some regards, you almost have to pass the MSD if you want to borrow funds to pay for the nourishment project, minus any of these other things that I listed. But again, passing this tonight does not set in stone any tax rate. That'll come with the adoption of the budget. So I just wanted to preface your vote with that information.
Understood. Any questions, council? Comment, thoughts?
I appreciate you making that clear, Cliff, because I think that's been something that's been missing from the discussion thus far and not been fully out there as a fact for everybody to understand why we arrived at the MSD concept versus like a general obligation bond, which would be petition to a voter referendum. Many of you in this room wouldn't be able to vote on that bond. It would be voters that are not in this room. So it's
one thing I want to clarify, these three slides that I just showed you came directly from the Carter's presentation. I didn't make those up. I took them from the January 20 presentation.
Is that something, these three, could they be put on our website? Are they ever there?
they're on there now.
Okay.
It's, I want to also thank you, Cliff, for the explainer, because I don't think I realized that in order to, well, number one, I definitely realized that the only way we can do this project as a town is to borrow the money. The only way we can do this project as a town is to get the little bit of money that we got from the state of 1.4 million and the big pot of money that we're getting from Dare County, which comes from occupancy and sales taxes. Without those two, we would not be doing this project. So, but our part requires us to borrow the money. We can't just come up with that amount of money. And the only way to do it is, as you just explained, that's practical, is the special obligation bonds, which require that we vote for an MSD, for some scheme of MSDs. And whatever the tax rates are, we're not going to talk, that's just another decision that we have to make. So I really appreciate it. I know we saw this before, but it just, maybe just the repetition, I now really, I get it now. So I appreciate it. Sorry, I'm mumbling.
No, you're
I'm done.
fine. In simplest terms, an MSD and a tax are two different things, and you commingle them too much, and all of a sudden you've lost the picture of what you're trying to accomplish. I think we can make the MSDs work to where they're fair and where they're equitable. I really believe that. Now, that's going to mean how much does each MSD pay as far as its percentage. But there's no inherent tax within MSD. It becomes part of it only on the action of council. So we won't know what that would be until our budget workshop, hopefully the middle of this month. We'll have a chance to really talk about that in more detail. But for right now, we're looking at how do we make this happen, and the options that I see them, even though it doesn't sit well for a lot of us, is moving forward with the MSD concept until we get to budget time, and then see where we are with it at that time. Anything I haven't said that I should say, or not say anything else?
Right on. It's good.
Thank you, Cliff. So council, we have a,
Before we get there, I just
Go ahead.
want to insert, in the last day and a half, I called 5 people, not a big survey, but they were year-rounders here, because I hadn't heard from anybody internal in the town. And so the 5, one said they had no problem if we increased their tax 6.5%. The next one didn't even want the project done at all, period. However, that was determined, their comment was, if you're going to do the project, there needs to be some MSD concept in it. The other 3, and none of them, none of them indicated they would not pay their share. The other 3 said they would pay their share, but they felt we needed to have the MSD concept in it. It's like I said, this wasn't a big survey, but I was wanting to get what the other people in town had to say. So it's a mixed bag, just like there is here tonight. So that was my comment on the small survey I did.
It's a common refrain that I've heard in my day. You all have seen the emails that went through for the MSD hearing initially, and you've talked amongst yourselves. You know the kind of commentary that we heard tonight, anti-MSD. But as I go about my day-to-day business and I talk to other constituencies in town, they're very much in favor of the MSD concept. They're just not emailing us because we see them. I run into them all the time, and they have other means of communicating with us other than just email, because I hang out with them. And I think that's what Leo, you took a little 5-person survey. This is not an easy, the opinions in town vary from, don't do anything, the beach doesn't need it. Oh, before we know it, the ocean's gonna be washing over Route 12 and we won't be able to have it in our homes. I mean, there's extremes across it. And up here on this dais, at least personally, I am trying to thread this needle and deliver a project that I see a majority of oceanfront owners are asking us for. But a majority of people beyond the ocean, like my father and my other family members, they could care less if we put a grain of sand on the beach. So how do we balance that? We try to have a graduated tax structure that establishes where the benefits fit the best. That's not going to be fair to anybody in a lot of people's eyes. I'm prepared to defend it. The tax rates are not what we're discussing tonight, but call me up. I mean, everybody I'll be the one that's tar and feather on this because I'll die on this hill. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people, looked at this quite a bit. I don't think an equal across the board single tax rate for the town is fair. And I will defend that to y'all. And again, tar and feather me. I will stand that ground. But it's done a tremendous amount of thinking. It's a public infrastructure investment on private property. I mean, that is what it is. And if you all wanted to deed that private property to the town, then we can maybe have a different discussion. The canals were deeded to the town in that process. I mean, I can't get past the improvement that's occurring on private property. And so then the beach is private.
Don't get into
The property is private. Have you read your deeds? Well, there's a public trust access to the beach. If we were to put bulkheads all through the sound fronts, you still have navigation up to those property lines. Many of those people's property lines extend into the water, but I can still fish. I can bring my boat through. There's public trust access there. If we were to bulkhead the sound front, I imagine, for the sake of argument, many of you would say it should be a fair tax across the town for us to improve the sound front properties. I don't think the majority feels that way. And that's what we're hearing on a day-to-day going around town, or I'm hearing. I can only speak for myself. So I'm trying desperately to thread this needle. And I think what our conversations, we're not talking tax rates, but eventually we will be. And you're all here now in this group. I want to hear whether or not you think the project is viable. Should we do the project?
Yeah.
And then what is the graduation rates of these tax rates? I mean, if you want to stick to it should be equal, I mean, that's fair. And I respect your opinion. I appreciate you sharing it because it's important to hear. It really is. So, I mean, that's my little spiel that's not rehearsed and not written down, but I feel you all deserve some thought in what I'm thinking on this. So, again, I'll be walking out. You can throw whatever you want at me.
Well, my comment is, yes, we can kill the project. That's the simplest part of it. But the thing we got to keep in mind, the next window that we would have the opportunity to maybe do something if a deep beach is compromised is 5 years from now. Which will be 2027. We aren't confident that at that point, if the county would even assist funding it. The other side is if we do the project, or if we don't do the project and the beach is compromised, we're talking about insurance policy, FEMA won't give us any help. Plus, 5 years from now, the cost of the project will be greater than it is at this point in time. So it's a kind of a case, do we want to roll the dice? Because if the beach is compromised, and people, we all know it, it's not a case of if, it's a matter of when. And if you don't believe me, just go to the Mexico City beach in Florida, who thought they would never get hit with a hurricane. And they got hit with a 5, and it tore the living daylights out of them. So if that would happen here, which it can, Isabel came close, and that beach is compromised, we can't do anything about it. We cannot do a project like that by itself because just mobilization costs make up about 40 to 50% of a project. So it's a kind of case, people, what do we want to do? Personally, I'm like Matt's parent or father, I really don't go to the beach. My family does, I don't take the time to sit there. But I understand the importance of the beach, what it means to the town and to the county. And everybody up and down eastern North Carolina coast is fighting the same battle that we're in now. So it's all in what we want to do. And it sounds like when you figure out the statute, first order of business, we don't have much choice. We can vote no, but that'll be the end of our discussion of any project. Is that what we all want to do? Personally, I don't think so. I think we need to protect that beach. We need to make it wider. As the fact that it is wider then it migrates to wave action that does protect our dunes. And you people in Pelican Watch should know that. So that is the reason why I'm going to have to vote yes. We need to establish an MSD. We understand that. Now, the next question after that is how we tax it. And the one person tonight was the first time I've seen anybody say what tax rate they might be acceptable to them. Because if we tax the whole town for the $1.2 million, which is 7.82 cents, that's about a 34 or 35% increase in taxes for everybody. So that's my point on it. I just hope you, and I want to thank you all for your comments and the emails we received. Because this is probably, for me, the toughest decision I've had to make in almost 6 years that I've been on this council. And it's a long-term decision. I mean, we're not talking about a year or 2 years. And yes, we can fuss about the canals, and I am a canal property owner. But I don't get any benefit from that canal until I sell my property, because it's not bulkheaded, I don't launch anything off of it. Matter of fact, I have to fight keeping the trees out of it. So that's my point on it, and I think we're probably going to have to, even though it's not, we're not going to be popular, we're going to have to establish that MSD if we want to fund the project. That's the question, or the answer. It's a tough one to answer.
You hear what he said?
Yeah.
Okay. You want to say something?
Just real quick, I wanted to say, like some of my fellow council members, that I really appreciate everyone who has emailed us, called us, and shown up for the public hearings come tonight. I want you to know I read every single email, and even if, like Matt, you end up being very disappointed with what I do when I vote, I don't want you to think that I haven't, with respect, read, listened, and heard you, because I have. And I will also say that this council probably won't do anything more difficult than what we're doing right now with this project. I can't imagine anything more difficult. But again, I don't want you to think I haven't listened to you and read all of your emails, because I have. But I'm likely going to disappoint you. So, thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Jim?
Yeah, I'd like to acknowledge and thank everybody who sent us emails on this subject. And as you can guess, they've been all over the page. And there are very strong groups and very strong opinions. But like what the other council members up here are saying, we're reading those things. And they're having an impact on our decision making, at least mine. I can only speak for mine right now. So I'd like to emphasize the fact that a vote up here for the MSDs tonight is not a vote for putting it all off on those properties within those districts. I mean, I've had a discussion with somebody else about how we can spread more of this around the town. So put in context what this vote tonight is for. It's for keeping the structure of the MSDs, but as has been said up here before, we may not even use that as a means of funding, the beach renourishment efforts. But anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Again, we have all been reading your emails, and thank you for them.
Anything else? The one thing we haven't talked about, and I think it's important that I share this with you, we may not get an opportunity to do this again, even though the county has been on a 5 to 7 year cycle now since the first Negus Ed project years ago. What I'm hearing and what I'm being told is that there's the funds, the source of the funds is gradually drying up. They can't keep spending $15, $18 million per town to do a beach nourishment program every 5 years. So we have no guarantees we'll have another opportunity 5 or 6 or 7 years down the road, assuming our beaches would last that long and hold up that long, which they may well do, but we don't know that. In listening to you folks here tonight, all I can tell you is that and I think we're going to, as a council, going to agree to go ahead and move forward with the MSDs, but I can assure you that it's going to be a question of the tax implications of that and how we make that equitable to everyone. And that can be done. The numbers we've seen so far are, I think, a little bit high to what they should be. I've had conversations with our town managers recently as this morning about this. I believe we can make it equitable and fair and have the MSDs be the tool we get it done through. I have nothing else to add to that. Anybody else? Cliff, you have anything you want to add?
No, sir.
Council? No further discussion. I would ask for a motion to adopt ordinance 2021-0401, establishing an ordinance establishing and creating a town of Southern Shores beach erosion control and flood and hurricane works municipal service districts as amended and approved at the April 13th, 2021 meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Matt. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, same sign. The motion is made and carried to move forward with the adoption of the MSDs. Thank you.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Next item would be, you got it with you, huh? Okay, good job.
Thank you, Cliff.
Okay. More. Okay.
You want to talk to us about this?
Yes, sir. The
We're ready.
next, yeah, and it's quite a segue. What I've just presented you with is the manager's recommended budget for fiscal year 2021, 2022. As you know, the requirements of the budget officer, which is the town manager, is to present you his or her recommended budget based on the input from staff, department heads, and present to you a plan for the next fiscal year based on what we think is the best approach forward. So obviously you've got workshops coming up, you've got a public hearing coming up, you've got a lot of work to do. As you just discussed, how are you going to address the debt service for the beach nourishment project? But I did want to present the budget message. Presented for your consideration is the town manager's recommended budget for fiscal year July 1, 2021. It's in accordance with the North Carolina Local Government Fiscal Control Act as required by North Carolina General Statute, Chapter 155-11. The economic outlook last year during the budget planning process was bleak, to say the least. Many local governments budget extremely conservatively while reducing anticipated revenues due to the overall assumption that COVID-19 would have a dramatic budget impact. Health concerns and restrictions were anticipated to decimate sales and occupancy taxes, which make up a large portion of the town's revenues. In some respects, the opposite effect was realized. And according to the North Carolina League of Municipalities, the economic outlook at the time of their annual revenue forecast is largely focused on the recovery from COVID-19 and a transition to a post-COVID era. It appears that at least in the near term, we have reason to be optimistic that our recovery will continue. Town staff recognizes that the increases in sales and occupancy and land transfer taxes that we are currently experiencing will eventually start to level out. With this in mind, the amounts for the shared revenues for next fiscal year are budgeted more conservatively than what the town will receive in the current fiscal year. So I want to mention talk about the need for increased tax rates in the general fund. The budget recognizes the needs for revenues to meet present as well as future growth in expenditures for the general fund, as well as for the planned 22 beach nourishment project. Before the town took the wise path of adopting an austere 2021 budget, there was recognition and discussion that a tax increase was likely justified. In recent years before reval occurred in 2020, the town budgeted approximately the equivalent of 5 cents on street improvements, or near $662,000. Due to COVID-related concerns, the budget reductions, the need to make budget reductions rather than increasing the amount, which would have been $783,035 after reval, the town reduced funding to $198,759. The remaining $463,000 was used to make up a shortfall in anticipated revenue, for a one-time merit bonus for staff, for full-time funding for a full-time building inspector for December 21 to June 22, and $45,000 to offset a grant. Last year, a tax increase of 2.92 cents would have balanced the budget and kept the additions the council added as just listed. Plus kept street improvements budgeted at $662,340. The difference in capital infrastructure improvement plan line item that is being recommended at $1,123,689 as compared to last year's budget amount of $198,759 is $924,000, which is an increase of almost 5.6 cent tax increase. 1 cent in ad valorem taxes generates $162,852, while a tax increase for general fund expenditures is not recommended at this time. A tax increase will likely be part of the 22-23 recommended budget. So the increased taxes for beach nourishment. Fiscal year 2021 marks the first of 5 debt service payments for the planned spring 22 beach nourishment project. Funding from this project, as everyone knows, there's a portion from the county, there's a portion from the grant, and then the town's responsible for its share. The recommended increase would bring the current townwide the recommended increase for the beach nourishment project would bring the current townwide tax rate from 19.58 cents to 23 cents, which is an increase of 3.42 cents. The use of fund balance. Through several years of careful and deliberate conservative budgeting, the town has accumulated a large fund balance. These funds can be used to balance the budget, pay for large capital items, and possibly be transferred to the capital reserve fund for future project needs. Ideally, fund balance should be used for future projects rather than budgeted for annual operating expenses. So an overview of the budget that's recommended. This year's general fund budget totals $7,850,910, which is an increase of $667 or 24.74%. The town will have to raise taxes to generate funds to pay for the beach nourishment project, and it is not recommended that an additional tax increase occur for general fund expenses in the same fiscal year. Though not a preferred measure of fully balancing the budget, an appropriation from the unassigned fund balance of $453,392 is recommended to avoid additional tax increase for the next fiscal year. An additional $770,000 is recommended to be transferred from the general fund to the capital reserve fund. $20,000 of that is for canals, and $750,000 of that is for beach nourishment debt service. If a tax increase is approved for beach nourishment debt service next year, it would mark the first tax increase for the town since 2013. The mandatory town contributions for the state retirement system are anticipated to increase from 10.2 cents to 10.2% to 11.39% for general employees, while increasing from 10.95% to 12.04% for LEOs, law enforcement officers. The town will see an approximate 10% increase to the medical premiums for employees. Small groups such as ours, their insurance renewal rates are based on statewide claims for the year of all small groups. What that amounts to, currently in health insurance, we're paying $15,641 monthly. The increase would be, monthly would be $17,439, or a yearly increase total of $21,576. For beach nourishment, the example that I gave, and it was referenced tonight before the public hearing last March, was somewhere around 23.5 cents for MSD1, 9 cents for MSD2, and 2.75 for townwide. At the time I was writing this budget message, 2 municipal service districts were anticipated to be created. What I'm recommending for MSD1 is 12 cents. The tax rate for MS2 is recommended at 3 cents, and the townwide that I've mentioned is recommended at 3.42 cents, bringing the total town tax rate to 23 cents. A $750,000 transfer from undesignated fund balance to the capital reserve fund to be combined with a $250,000 amount previously transferred is recommended to pay down the beach nourishment debt with $200,000 a year allocation, which will lower the tax necessary in each MSD as well as the townwide rate. 1 cent in MSD 1 generates $29,000, 1 cent in MSD 2 generates $56,000. So what I've proposed is it would be for beach nourishment a total, and just to try and, the lawyer can explain this better than me, but to try and to example of, or explanation as to why those in MSD 1 have to pay MSD 2 as well. Think of it as an overlap. If you overlay, if you put MSD 2 on a map, it has to encompass the beach nourishment project. So when you overlay MSD 1, it's in both districts, and the taxes are that is taken into account when establishing the total tax rate. So total for MSD 1 is recommended, and again, you can adjust this as I know you're going to dig into this. Is 18.42 for the oceanfront, 6.42 for MSD2, and again 3.42 townwide. Total taxes paid for MSD1 would be 38 cents, MSD2 would be 26 cents, and townwide would be 23 cents. So I want to, can you go to the next? I want to kind of dig in. So as I've said, the revenue required $6 million, yearly debt 1.2. So I'm recommending that we allocate a total of $1 million from fund balance to get that yearly amount down to $1,024,000. Let's go to the next one. So this is what that looks like. So in MSD1, the total value of properties in MSD1 is just over $290 million. The revenue, and I'm recommending that 34% of the revenue needed come from MSD1, 17% from MSD2, and 55% from townwide. You'll see that equals 106% of revenue needed. The statutes allow us to carry a certain amount of reasonable fund balance, and this would do that. So the contribution, so we've generated, with my recommendation, $1,074,000. The $200,000 from the contribution from the capital reserve fund gets us to a total revenue of $1,274,000. The debt service was $1,224,775. So that leaves yearly a fund balance of just under $50,000.
Where does that come from?
That's the revenue that we're generating in the MSD plus the $200,000 generates $49,000 more than the revenue needed to pay the debt service. So again, if you go to this kind of spells it out. The current tax rate is to the far left, 19.58. The total in each MSD the town-wide total, and then sorry about that spacing error there with nourishment, but that kind of breaks it out as to what I'm recommending you do. So as I've said, the town council has options to consider when applying the beach nourishment tax rates. You heard tonight, you don't have to apply any of this. If you were to apply a town-wide rate with the $200,000 reduction, I'm recommending it would be about 6.5% town-wide. So by buying down the debt, $1 million, $200,000 a year, you're bringing that tax rate from 7.82 to about 6.5, which is a little bit more than MSD 2 is recommended at. Street improvements. The town is currently beginning the process of a pavement condition study. Those results are not expected until sometime next month. The time of the results make it difficult, if not impossible, to budget for specific projects. This budget recommends $1,123,689,000 be budgeted for street improvements. A pay study implementation. The council directed a pay and classification study that was presented to you in February of 2020. Due to the study coinciding with the beginning of the pandemic, implementation of the study was put on hold. Recommended with this budget is the implementation of new pay plan at a total cost of $89,729. This plan makes one-time locally compared market adjustments, brings employees with 8 years of service to the midpoint of their salary range, while also recognizing all employees' years of service. The timing of this increased expenditure is recognized to be met with a tax increase for beach nourishment, but it is also met with the need to retain experienced employees and remain competitive with other Dare County municipalities. To keep employees on track going forward, it is recommended that an employee is moved up within their grade 2% each year to keep up with the cost of living. Merit increases are recommended to be given each year with annual evaluations. Also included is the pay plan or reclassifications and adoption of new job description and a new pay scale. Fire department, the contribution to the fire department remains unchanged at $625,358. We budgeted a full year of fire department debt service this fiscal year, but next year will be the first year that we actually make full payments of $314,000. Sanitation and recycling fees, it was mentioned earlier that the cost of commercial sanitation collection is going up. It's $207.25 per dumpster. Sanitation collection stays the same at $5.59 per household. However, the price per ton paid to Albemarle Regional Solid Waste Authority is budgeted $77.46. The amount budgeted recommended is 20% greater than the current fiscal year, and that's because of the additional tonnage that Mayor Pro Tem mentioned. Curbside recycling stays the same at $5.21 per household and $80.80 per ton for hauling that material. The ocean rescue contract, in the present fiscal year, the ocean rescue contract was amended to extend the season. An anticipated increase in contracted services of $8,000 above the adopted budget is recommended. $30,400 is budgeted to address seasonal cut-through traffic. The next slide is just gives you the graphic, the visual of our budget, the budget that was amended currently, what we're recommending, and the difference in each one of those revenue funds. Go to the next one. I did want to mention something that's extremely important for our budget, being the occupancy, sales, and land transfer. This makes up 30% of our budget, but what you'll see, we've tried to recommend more conservatively than we're going to realize this year. Go to the next one. These are the general fund expenditures. Again, by department, it'll show what the budget as amended versus what's recommended and the difference. The next slide kind of gives you a bar graph of, oh, sorry, I skipped that one. This will just give you the standard pie, how the budget for expenditures is cut up. The next one is a bar graph of showing expenditures going from left to right with the amounts expended. And for that, though, I did, I know I've put a lot in front of you. I just did want to take in closing, just an opportunity to thank all the town staff, thank the mayor and the council for maintaining a productive and pleasant work environment, not only for myself, but for all town staff to work within. I'm extremely grateful to be here and appreciate the support you give the entire town organization. You still got a long agenda to go through the rest of the night, and I may not have been fully aware of that when I just went through all of that, but there's a lot for you to digest. I don't think the anticipated for any discussion tonight, but you do have a budget workshop on May 18th, or excuse me, you have a workshop meeting scheduled on May 18th at 9 a.m. and staff will be prepared to kind of get into the nuts and bolts of this, and I'm sure there'll be others that will need to be scheduled. But I did want to remind folks the public hearing again, June 1st at 5:30. And the budget will be up on the website first thing tomorrow morning, and hard copies will be at Town Hall for folks to inspect, and they can contact the town clerk to do that.
Any questions for Cliff, council? No, thank you, Cliff. Good presentation.
Thanks for the notebook. It's nice.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
I like the
Appreciate
graphs.
it. I know the staff have a lot of time in it, so thank you all.
I like the graphs.
Your graphs are good.
So the next order of business, if I'm not mistaken, is to look at a budget amendment for the police department radio replacement upgrade to comply with NC Viper project. That's on page 16 of our pile of paper here. Do you want to address this, David, for us? You want to address this for us, or we just want to work through it?
Good evening, once again. As you can see, with the attachments there, I was told that there were funds available out of this fiscal year's budget. So what you see before you is what I had budgeted for next year. We have been, when I have extra monies in some of the budgets, for example, part of this year and part of last year, because they canceled a lot of our training and travel, we utilized some of that money. By the year 2025, we have to be in compliance with all of our communications, radios, car radios, portables. So we've been trying to use some of that extra money that we couldn't spend for training, and we've been buying 2 and 3 radios at a time. So what you see before you, I was told that there was funding available out of this fiscal year. I was asked to draft the budget amendment, which is before you. So what that will initially do is that'll reduce the police department budget by $53,000. I believe it's $950, because we'll be purchasing those radios this year instead of out of next year's budget. We'll still be purchasing some, but this is one of the higher cost ones, because we've never had a base radio, and that's, as you can see there, I think that was $27,000 by itself. We're not immune from this. All the departments across, up and down the beach, pretty much all over the United States have to comply. As you remember, about 10, 11 years ago, we all had to go to an 800 megahertz.
Yeah.
And now we're going up to a new P25, which is going to require TDA, as it's explained in there through the Viper. So everybody really is affected by that. We're just trying to stay ahead of it. I wouldn't want to have to come to you in 2024 and say, by the way, we need $945,000 to replace all our radios. So we've been doing that gradually. So that's why we did what we did tonight.
Thank you, David.
Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, I was just gonna, for clarification, all the equipment that you're going to be purchasing, you can immediately put to use as soon as you receive it. I mean, in other words, it can be used every day in your work.
Absolutely, yes. All the equipment we're getting, the car radios, they'll be placed into the new vehicles that we already have ordered. The base station will be installed, and that includes the installation as well, yes.
Thank you.
I guess this,
So council, I'll make a motion to authorize the police department to purchase 3 mobile radios at $11,900, 4 portable radios at $14,800, and 1 base station, 7 desk set at $27,250 for a total of $53,950. This includes installation costs. Do I have a motion to move to do that? Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Matt. Any further discussion?
I just had a question. I see the funds are coming from, apparently from land transfer tax. I guess, where's Bonnie? Is that because we collect a lot of land transfer tax?
All I was told was there
Yeah,
was funds available, and I learned you don't get it
Yeah.
if you don't ask.
Yeah,
for it,
I know.
so.
I'm not asking you. I'm asking our,
We want to know where it's coming from.
our finance guru.
Yes, good evening. So thus far, we have received 3 of our 4 payments on land transfer. I think we budgeted 282. We're currently at 395.
Okay,
So that's where those funds are coming from.
okay, just.
So
that-
we already have it in our hand.
Oh, okay.
We're not anticipating getting it. We have it in our hand already.
Okay.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Thanks, Bonnie.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Motion's made and carried to buy those radios. Next item of business, Public Works equipment purchase is on page 22.
Yep, I'll fill in for Public Works Director David Bradley. He had a justified reason he needed to leave. And this item, if you're more comfortable in, addressing him with your questions, this is an item that can come back. This is not something that, that has to be done tonight. So just wanted to have that option. It's similarly, this is an item that would have been recommended to you in next fiscal year's budget. I saw this as an opportunity that we could take it out of that budget and, because we've had revenues in land transfer higher than what we had, clearly than what we had anticipated. This was a piece of equipment that Public Works needs to be able to get into tight spaces more cleaner and more neater. It's a skid steer, walk behind, Toro Dingo. It allows them to work in the right of way, more cleaner. It allows them, it's a 4-in-1 bucket function like a standard bucket, but can open and close for more versatility. The grapple rake is heavy duty attachment capable of lifting brush, cutting brush, other materials. It also has a mower that handles vegetations that regular mower is not designed for. It allows them to work in the right of way, less spoke with one of the guys that would be operating this today to try and tell them to, why. And it, like I said, it allows them to get in tighter spaces. They can mow in the right of way without throwing rocks. It captures them. Just a versatile piece of equipment that we're recommending you allocate this year instead of next.
My only question, and Leo's probably better at
That's why it's not a John Deere.
detail, well, no, I
John
have
Deere
a
doesn't make
question.
this type of
Okay, good.
skid steer loader.
My question would be, why would we would choose a skid steer equipment machine rather than an articulated machine? And I don't know that, because it's less disruptive to the ground around it, but that's, you may have already done that
That's my
research, I don't know.
If it's what I think it is, I think it's a track machine, not a tired machine.
That's right.
And,
It's a stand behind too.
Yeah,
so it
yeah,
has
they stand,
smaller
there's a
wheelbase,
platform
and
they
it
stand
gets
on
into tighter areas.
and control it.
Okay.
It's, I guess, where do we plan to acquire it from?
We've actually demoed one and Bonnie, do you know where this is coming from? Where the dealer is? I'm sorry,
Well, it's a specialty type machine. We want to make sure we got, good support.
Good support, good warranty, good, yeah.
Yeah, from parts, service, and warranty.
Land and Coates, I think, is in Virginia.
Yes, I'm familiar with
Is who
them.
they have gotten a quote from for, for the amount. But they're having to get 3 bids because of our bid policy. But I told them I just needed something, for this. So where they went, I'm pretty sure was Land and Coates in Virginia.
Is this something that we could acquire through on a state bid? Or-
That actually, he checked on that, and there's also there's a state bid, and then there's another called Sourcewell. That is also something that we can use, and I think that some of those vendors he's looking are on there. But that's the last I heard, but that's where he got the quote from, was from Land and Coates.
Okay. Just so we got good warranty coverage on, because it can be,
Thank you, Bonnie.
it can be a high maintenance type item.
So council, I need a motion for council to approve staff to purchase the requested equipment and attachments.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Leo. Any further discussion? All in favor of going ahead and investing in this skid steer loader indicate by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Motion's made and carried to buy the skid steer loader.
Thank you.
Purchase it.
Okay, page 25.
Page 25. This is town code stuff. I believe it's going to require a public hearing or not? Yes. Oh, we didn't have a public hearing on the equipment purchase, though.
Nope, just,
My
we're good to go.
bad.
No, we don't need one.
No,
Okay, public
Just-
hearing, town code amendment.
is that
We
public
don't
hearing?
need one there?
We do.
Thought
Town
so.
Code Amendment 2103?
So this time I turn it over to our town attorney, Mr. Gallup.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is going to be a public hearing, a legislative public hearing on a text amendment. I'll go through the process that we normally go through, but this is going to apply to all of the following 4 or 5 text amendments that we're going to do. And we'll probably run through them relatively quickly, given the fact that we don't have a whole lot of public here to make comment. But this is a legislative public hearing, so the comments are not under oath. They are just comments and opinions and thoughts, and we're going to limit the time to 4 minutes for each person who does decide to speak. I'll let Mr. Haskett give a brief, or I believe it's going to be Mr. Haskett, give a brief overview of each ordinance when we get there, and then we'll open it up for public comment. They'll give their comments. I'll close the public comment, and it'll be up to you to decide to vote to approve, deny, or potentially modify what's in front of you.
You're going to do it one at a time?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, all right.
And so the first one we're going to do is TCA, what's proposed is TCA 2103, an ordinance amending the town code of ordinances, town of Southern Shores, related to subdivisions. And I'll open the public hearing, and if Mr. Haskett could come forward and give his presentation.
Okay, how are you? You okay?
Mhm.
You'll take a break?
Thank you, Ben. Good evening. Good evening again, Mayor, members of council. The next item on your agenda is TCA 2103. At the March 2nd, 2021 Town Council meeting, Town Council instructed town staff to take valuable elements out of the adoption draft of the Town Code update written by CodeWright for review by the Planning Board and the Town Council for future consideration. The proposed amendments to Chapter 30 subdivisions are a result of state law changes. The first is an amendment as a result of Session Law 2017-10 to the current definition of subdivision, which establishes an exemption for the division of a tract into parcels in accordance with the terms of a probated will or in accordance with intestate succession under Chapter 29 of the General Statutes. The second amendment is a replacement of Section 30-43, alternatives to final plat approval, as a result of Session Law 2015-187 that addresses performance guarantees. Lastly, the third amendment is the addition of Section 30-44, expedited review, which is a result of Session Law 2017-10 that establishes an expedited review of qualifying subdivisions that can be reviewed and approved by the zoning administrator. Town staff found that Policy 2 of the town's land use plan is applicable to this TCA. With respect to a recommendation, town staff has determined that the proposed amendments are consistent with the town's currently adopted land use plan, and town staff recommends approval of the proposed TCA. The town planning board unanimously recommended approval of this application with amendments at the April 19, 2021 planning board meeting. You have a copy of this staff report, agenda summary, and the language in your packets. I'd be glad to try to answer any questions you have at this time on this specific TCA.
Does anyone on the council have any questions of Mr. Haskett?
Council?
Do we have any parcels that can be subdivided?
Possibly, yes.
Just for that one over here?
Possibly, yes. There are several, there are plenty of parcels in the town that could be subdivided. As far as what applies to this exemption or the exemption created here, it's still, yes, that's possible.
There are a couple on Hillcrest, I think, north end of Hillcrest. The land mass is big enough that we
But
probably.
it still
we could
meet the
probably
minimum lot
subdivide.
requirement?
Yeah.
The one on Hillcrest that the planning board is going to be reviewing this month, it does not meet the criteria for this expedited review due to the size of the parcel. This exemption states if it's an area or tract of parcel to be divided is greater than 5 acres, and this one is not.
I missed the last thing you said.
The Hillcrest subdivision that the planning board is going to consider at their meeting this month, if this expedited review language were in effect today, it still would not apply to this proposed subdivision because the land is not greater than 5 acres.
Okay. Any further comments, council, questions?
No.
Thank you, Mr.
Can I
Haskett.
get a motion to approve?
Yep, he's got to close it.
Still got to check and see if
I'm sorry.
the member of the public would like to speak. There's two.
Got ahead of myself a little bit.
There's no one in the public that would like to speak on this, Mr. Mayor, so I'm going to close the public hearing.
Thank you. Council, I need a motion to approve TCA 2103. If I can get that.
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? If not, I'd call for a vote to approve. All in favor to approve TCA 2103, indicate by saying aye.
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 No one's opposed. Motion was made and carried, Sheila. So next item of business, public hearing,
No,
town code,
back to Attorney Gallup.
right, 2104. So I'll turn that over to you this time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll open the public hearing for what's proposed as Town Code Amendment 21-04 related to the flood zone or flood damage prevention ordinance and the AO zone RFPE, which is the something that Mr. Haskett will define when he gets back up to the podium as what the acronym means.
Thank you, Ben. The next item on your agenda is TCA 2104. The town is currently in the process of preparing for a CRS cycle visit that typically occurs every 5 years. The town's last cycle visit was in 2015, and the town's current CRS rating is a Class 6, which allows a 20% discount on flood policies in the town. The reviewing agency recently brought to our attention that there is an issue with our current flood ordinance that would limit us to a Class 9 community, which are only allowed a 5% discount on flood policies. The issue is an addendum to the CRS requirements that went into effect on January 1, 2021, that requires communities to have at least 1 foot of freeboard in flood ordinances in order to qualify as a Class 8 or better community. For AE and VE flood zone elevation requirements, For AE and VE flood zones, our current elevation requirements satisfy the new CRS requirement, but our AO flood zone elevation requirements do not. Town staff has confirmed with the reviewing agency that the proposed amendment would satisfy the new freeboard requirement and make us eligible to maintain or improve our current CRS rating. Town staff found that policy 18 and action item 18B are applicable to this TCA. We also recommend approval of the TCA, and the planning board recommended approval of it as well unanimously at the April 19, 2021 planning board meeting. If y'all have any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them in this case as well.
Any questions from council?
Any questions, council?
No.
I'm waiting on you, Ben.
Yep, seeing no questions from council. Mr. Haskett, do you have anything else?
No, sir.
Anyone from the audience, if you could raise your hand if you have, if you'd like to step forward and make any comment at this public hearing. Seeing none, Mr. Mayor, I'll close the public hearing and give it back to you.
Thank you. So council, I need a motion to approve TCA 2104. If anyone might make that,
I'll make that motion.
thank you. I need a second.
Second.
Thank you, Matt. All in favor, any further discussion? If council's, all in favor of the motion that's been on the table, please, on the floor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Motion is made and carried. Next item of business, I think, is number 16, public hearing, zoning text amendment 2101, minimum living space and protest petitions. Ben?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll open this public hearing on proposed zoning text amendment 21-1 related to minimum living space and protest petitions, and ask Mr. Haskett if he can provide his presentation.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is ZTA 2101. Again, this is what town staff considers to be a valuable element from the town code update written by CodeWright. The proposed amendments to section 36-202, 203, 204, 205, and chapter 36, article 4, changes and amendments are a result of state law changes. The first proposed amendment is an amendment as a result of Session Law 2019-174, which states that zoning ordinances may not set a minimum square footage of any structures subject to regulation under the North Carolina Residential Code for 1 and 2 family dwellings. The proposed amendment to Chapter 36, Article 14, changes and amendments, is an amendment of Session Law 2015-160, which eliminated protest petitions. Town staff found that Policy 2 is applicable to this ZTA. Town staff recommends approval of the ZTA, and the Town Planning Board also recommended approval of it unanimously at the April 19, 2021 Planning Board meeting.
Any questions from council?
It's all deletions.
Yes, sir.
You have a question?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Let's keep moving.
So that means we could have a 900 as a minimum, or 800, or
As far as
500,
they want to go.
as low as it.
Yeah, it's small houses or
No minimum.
no minimum.
But then we can still, maintain our max of 6,000.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Haskett? Mr. Haskett, do you have anything else?
No, sir.
Does anyone in the public wish to come forward and speak on ZTA 2101? Seeing no one, Mr. Mayor, I'll close the public
42.
hearing and give it back to you.
46,
Page 40.
42?
The
41,
public one
42.
we're on now is 40.
So we need a motion to approve ZTA 2101. Is that what we're looking for?
Yes.
Correct.
I'll make that motion to approve ZTA 21-01.
Thank
I'll
you.
second it.
Have a second. Any further discussion? If not, I'd ask for a vote. All in favor of approving ZTA 2101, indicate by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed, same sign. Motion's made and carried to approve ZTA 2101. Thank you.
I think he wants to table the next one.
Public hearing zoning text amendment 2102. I think, Wes, were you going to ask we postpone that or
We table it.
table it?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. Town staff requesting that council consider tabling discussion and consideration of this amendment tonight. And we're going to have the town attorney, and we're going to look at it a little closer and make some further revisions and take it back through the planning board and bring it back to you again at a later date, if you all don't mind.
That's fine. What's the procedure here as far as the
Motion.
public hearing?
Doing,
I think you can just,
Have a
you can take
motion?
it off the agenda, or you can move to table it. Since it's going to go back to the planning board and then come back to you, it's going to have to be renoticed. If you were going to actually consider what's in front of you at a later date, I would say go ahead and make a motion to table and set a date, maybe your next meeting. But you could do that, or you could just move past it on the agenda, and it will come back through the process and be renoticed, and it won't matter either way.
So you don't need a motion for tabling?
I don't think so.
Okay.
so let's table it.
I'd like to make a motion to table ZTA 21-02.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'll second it then.
Okay.
All right.
We're just going to table it.
So you made a motion to go ahead and table it. Okay. And
Yeah,
you
I
have
made
a
a
second to that
Leo
motion.
seconded it.
And if there's no further discussion, I just ask for approval or vote to approve tabling that, this subject to the pleasure of the planning board.
Aye.
Aye.
Right. The motion's made and carried, right? We're through with that. Public hearing zoning text amendment 2103, manufactured homes, page 57.
Mr. Mayor, this is another public hearing, again, on ZTA 21-03 related to manufactured homes. I'll open the public hearing and ask for Mr. Haskett to provide his presentation.
Thank you. This next item on your agenda is ZTA-2103. Again, this is valuable elements town staff thought from the town code update written by CodeWright. In this case, the proposed amendments are to a new section 36-177, manufactured homes or result of state law changes found in North Carolina General Statute 160D-910 that establishes that manufactured housing offers affordable housing opportunities for low and moderate income residents of this state who cannot otherwise afford to own their own home. The proposed amendment to Section 203, R1 Low Density Residential District, establishes manufactured homes as a conditional use in the R1 Low Density District, Residential District. Again, town staff found Policy 2 to be applicable to this ZTA. We recommend approval of this ZTA. The town planning board did as well unanimously at the April 19th, 2021 planning board meeting.
Thank you, Wes.
Yes,
Does
sir.
anybody have any questions for
Do
Mr.
you have any
Haskett?
questions, council?
Since this is state law, we don't have much choice, do we?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I
Thank
need a
you.
motion to approve the ZTA 2103.
Mr. Mayor, I need to,
I'm sorry.
I need to make the,
I'm sorry.
not,
Paul wants to say something.
I don't know that Mr. Berzolini's going to have any questions tonight.
Well, Paul,
But if anyone else in the public would like to speak to this ZTA, if you could raise your hand. Seeing no one, Mr. Mayor, I'll close the public hearing and give it back to you.
Thank you, Ben. I don't know what I'd do if you weren't here.
we got our share of them.
So I'm going to repeat the motion to approve ZTA 2103, a motion to do, I need a motion to do so.
So moved.
Thank you, Jim.
And I'll second.
Thank you, Elizabeth. All in favor of approving ZTA 2103 indicate by saying aye.
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 Okay. ZTA 2103 is approved. Public hearing, ZTA 2104, page 65.
Mr. Mayor, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing for ZTA 21-04 related to the list of prohibited uses, and I'll ask Mr. Haskett to provide his presentation.
Thank you. This application is ZTA-2104. Again, this is a valuable element, we thought, to come from the code update written by CodeWright. This amendment, this ZTA is to section 36-163, off-street parking requirements, which deletes the parking requirements for nursing homes since they are recommended to be prohibited in the proposed list of prohibited uses. The proposed amendments in new section 36-209, prohibited uses in all districts, are a result of NC Court of Appeals rulings regarding the need to identify prohibited uses. The proposed amendments include a list of prohibited uses, how to address unlisted uses, and rejections of proposals for uses that are not clearly prohibited. Once again, policy 2 is applicable from the town land use plan. Town staff recommends approval. Town planning board unanimously recommended approval at the April 19, 2021 planning board meeting. Any questions?
Real quick.
Yeah.
On the list of prohibited uses, if someone, for example, wanted to have a pawn shop, which is on the list of prohibited uses, and they came to see you, and you said it's on the list of prohibited uses, do they have an alternative route if they still want to pursue that particular use here in the town?
We have in our town code currently that to my knowledge, I don't know of any reason why it would need to be changed, is that people can submit requests to amend our town code via zoning text amendment process. I would say that they have that option, and I would say that they could also, if they wanted to, appeal my decision to the town's Board of Adjustment.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Haskett?
Thank you, Wes.
Well, I had, Elizabeth was going to give me hell for asking questions on this. I had the same thought the planning board did. Where did produce stands end up on this list?
I apologize. I'm glad you brought that up. The planning board did recommend also that you all or the town consider allowing produce stands and requirements that go with them. It is listed in here as a prohibited use, but the planning board did say that they did recommend that the council consider allowing them. So
What was you wanted to add?
Item number 36, strike it from the list, produce stands.
Matt's going to open up a produce
Is
stand
there?
Yeah.
because he's,
Go ahead.
My recommendation would be to leave it on the list unless you have standards in particular areas where you want to put it already, because,
I'm more,
well,
I don't care what the standard.
right. And that may, if that's the result, but the reason this prohibited list, this concept comes about is because of a Court of Appeals decision from a few years ago that essentially said, if you don't have it listed, we don't care if you say, your language says if it's not listed, it's prohibited. If it's not listed as being prohibited, they can do it, and they can do it without regulation. They can do it without any permits. They can just do it. And it's so anything that's not listed as how you do it should be listed in the prohibited list. And if you have any regulation, if you have something in the prohibited list that you want to add regulations to or allow somewhere and have some control over it, then I would leave it on the list and adopt a second amendment at some other point that put it in the right zones, at the right places with whatever form of regulation you wanted on it at that point. Because otherwise it arguably is permitted without any regulation.
Mhm.
Basically, everybody gets a one-off, and then the town gets to run and scramble to try and regulate things that it didn't want to have happen.
I look at it a little differently. Somebody sees it on this list and they say, well, I'm not going to bother setting one up in Southern Shores. I'm going to go up to Killable Hills or somewhere else. So I guess rather than striking it, Ben makes a good point. Is there a way that we can task our wonderful planning board to finding, I don't want you to have a whole lot more work with this, developing a standards for it, but following up with creating a standard. Since they want to get it off there too, they can do the heavy lifting.
Most likely, a produce stand would be set up in the marketplace where
Yeah.
you got traffic,
Absolutely.
or they could do it out of the back of a pickup truck.
I mean, when Tar Heel 2 first started over in KDH, I don't think anybody even knew they were there for a year and a half.
I think even with a produce stand, you may want to limit it to the commercial areas.
Yeah, and
not
I'm,
the
a- I'm
restaurant.
a- agreement with what you said. I just don't want West to have a whole bunch, but I would also like to see it struck from the list at some point without.
Yes, sir.
So I'll make a motion to adopt the ZTA 21-04.
Close the
we
public
gotta
hearing
close
first.
public
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm jumping the gun too.
He's gonna rush to go home.
Any other questions for Mr. Haskett?
Thank you, Wes.
Anyone from the audience wish to speak on this CTA? Seeing no one, Mr. Mayor, I'll close the public hearing.
Thank you. All in favor, motion to approve ZTA 2104.
With have the planning board go back to develop standards for a produce stand within town.
Do you need a motion
It's
for
a
that?
twofer.
Or
You might, I
can you
mean,
just?
if someone
Well,
makes
I'm
that
making it in the
motion,
motion.
He's
he
making
can-
it
He's
a
making that
motion.
a motion.
he can
Okay.
add it to it for
We're
sure.
adopting this with the recommendation the planning board takes a look at developing standards for produce stands and removing it from the prohibited uses list.
I will second that motion.
Any
What else
further
should I throw on
discussion?
there? Can we get slaughterhouse? No, I'm just kidding.
If not, I'm ask for a vote in favor of approving CTA 2104 with the change that Chairman Neal has recommended.
Aye.
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 Aye. So we're all set.
Yes.
I think everybody voted for it, did they not?
Yeah. I think so.
Okay, next order of business. Service contract renewal, trash, bay disposal. Cliff, you want to talk to us on that one, or Wes?
Thank you again, Mayor. Next item on your agenda is consideration of service contract renewal for trash with bay disposal. Our current contract will expire effective June 30, 2021. Our contract states that it will, that it can be renewed under negotiated terms and conditions. Bay Disposal has no objections to renewing the contract with the term expiration of June 30, 2022. Also including cost updates to reflect the current cost for residential and commercial collections, which is $559 per residential unit collection stop per month and $4,352.25 for all commercial collections. The current contract was $548 and $3,657.50. And the current contract states that the amount to be paid should reflect the current cost. And we're just bringing that cost up to, in the contract, up to what we're actually paying, excuse me.
Any questions, council? If not, I need a motion to approve the solid waste contract renewal.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I need a second.
And I'll second it.
Thank you, Leo. Any further discussion? If not, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Motion's made and carried to approve this solid waste contract renewal with Bay Disposal. Thank you. Service contract renewal for recycles with Bay Disposal. You're going to address that one too?
Yes, sir. This is the same case. Our recycling contract with Bay Disposal for collection and delivery will expire June 30, 2021. Current contract states that it can be renewed by mutual agreement if both parties agree. In this case, both parties agree. And Bay Disposal has agreed to renewing the contract for another one-year period with no change in price.
They aren't going to come back about January and want some more money, are they?
We shall see. We shall see.
It's recycling after all.
I need a motion, council.
All I know
to-
is recycling. There's a couple other things hit that recycling market again.
Mhm. I'd like to make a motion that we approve this service contract renewal with Bay Disposal for recycling.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor of renewing the recycling contract with Bay Disposal indicate by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? No.
Thank y'all.
Thanks, Wes.
Thank you. Service contract renewal for surf rescue from Sandusky, page 95 in your book.
As you know, the current contract with Surf Rescue expires on June 30 of this year. I was actually going back through the records, getting some information on this, and it was actually Mayor Sutherland was the first one that brought Merritt Dabrowski and Surf Ski to the town. So there's a lot of history here. The contract, this contract would extend through December 31, 2026. It is met with an $8,000 increase for the first year, or just below $5,000. 5%. And that's due mainly to increased hourly wages, the addition of a guard on an ATV for the fall from Labor Day to October 15th, as well as the need for increased cost of equipment such as the radios. I failed to add in your in the contract and in your packet under item C. It says that the hours of patrolling are from 10 to 6, but it doesn't give the hours for lifeguards to be positioned on their stands. I think it's implied, but I'd recommend we put 10 to 6. Police chief told me this months ago, and I forgot to get it included. And the I'd recommend you approve this extension with that caveat.
And where would you put that?
Under item C, it says, second sentence, it says 2 lifeguards will be positioned at 2 fixed stands, and that it should read from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Just repeat the 10 a.m.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you. So council need a motion to approve, to authorize the town manager to enter a contract with Sandski DBA Surf Rescue for ocean rescue services through December 2026 with the modification that the town manager has recommended. Do you have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Leo. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of approving Sandski's contract with the town indicate by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Motion is made and carried to approve Sandski's contract with the town for, what was the term of that?
In December.
5 years?
Yeah, 5
Okay,
years.
that's what I'm reading. Thank you. The last item on the agenda is a contract renewal, service contract for our auditor, Teresa Osborne of Dowdy and Osborne. Hi, Bonnie.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Yes, our audit contract is due for renewal. It expires June the 30th of this year. Teresa Osborne of Dowdy and Osborne has agreed to renew for 3 years. If we would do a 3-year, it would be $18,000 a year, which is only a $1,000 increase over what she has done for the last 3 years. The only thing that would affect that that price is when there is a required single audit due. And that is if we receive $750,000 or more from a federal or state grant, which of course, if we move forward with the beach nourishment and we get that fund, then that would require a single audit. And so that does cost extra in addition to that. But the town staff recommends that we renew the contract with her for 3 more years.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Yes, sir.
Need a motion to approve a 3-year contract, council, with Teresa Osborne for audit services beginning June 30th, 2021.
So
So
moved.
move.
Sorry, Leo.
I have a motion to approve. I need a second.
I'll second it
I heard a
then.
second. Thank you, Leo.
Can I ask a quick question before we vote?
Yeah.
Bonnie, I'm sorry, you've already gone back to your other chair. Teresa, full disclosure, I know Teresa, but I just want to ask the question. You said that she has served as our auditor for the previous 3 years. Did she also serve as the auditor for the 3 years prior to that as well? So would this be 9 years with the same auditor?
Yes, she has actually been our auditor since, let's see, I've been here, I think about 15 years.
Okay.
So she has been the auditor for that amount of time.
So something that I learned when I watched that movie about the,
The
yeah,
horse, yeah.
yeah. So I'm just going to ask the question, again, full disclosure, Teresa is a friend of mine.
Right.
Just,
Is it worth shopping this around?
well, is there any reason to think about someone else in your mind?
I mean-
Because you're the one that,
Right.
that interacts with the most with her.
So when I first got here, we had a different firm, and I mean, and they were, they did a great job. Teresa is very helpful in this, and that she has been on the other side. She has been finance officer for another municipality here, so she's very helpful, in other areas with, the audit and that sort of thing. With that said, there is only one other auditor here on the beach that has the same accreditation that she does, that can do government audits. Everyone else you have to pay come from Raleigh, Charlotte, and that sort of thing. And I think they're going to be more because you have to pay to put them up. So, and she puts us through the ringer every year. I'm not going to lie. I mean,
Okay.
it's not just a walk in the park. I mean, Sheila's had to work on the audit with me and that sort of thing. And she never asks for the same thing every year. So, it's not like you think, oh, I know she's going to do this. I mean, she does different things.
Okay.
And it's, she asks different questions all the time. So I can never be prepared for what she's going to ask me. So in my opinion, I feel comfortable with it.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that.
Sure.
Very much.
Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Mayor.
What movie was that?
What's the name of that movie? All the Queen's Horses?
Yes,
All the Queen's Horses.
horses, yeah, I watched it.
Sorry. Jim made the motion, Leo seconded.
Did we vote for it?
We need to vote.
All in favor of retaining Teresa Osborne as our town auditor for a 3-year term, indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion was made and carried to retain Ms. Osborne and her company as our auditor for 3 more years. This time I'll open general public comment for the second time. And Paul Borsellino, I think you signed up to speak a second time. Good evening again, Paul.
Good evening again. I'm Paul Borsellino, 16 7th Ave. I just wanted to hang in to the end and say thank you to all of you for the hard work that you've done related to this whole beach nourishment thing. As you know, I've been advocating for it from the beginning, and I appreciate you not throwing out the baby with the bathwater, which could have happened. You would have decided this is too complicated. Let's just not do it. So thank you to all of you for hanging in there. And if I understand it right, I learned something new tonight, which is that we have to do MSDs to do beach nourishment. And I see you all shaking your head, yes. So thank you for that clarification, Cliff. Now the task, I guess, becomes what tax rate to set for the MSDs. And what I would hope is that from what we've heard, just try to keep the tax rate so that it's shared across the whole town and everybody's in on this according to their property value. And I'm guessing that's what you're going toward. So thank you, Cliff. And thanks to all of you.
That's our goal.
Thanks, appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thanks for hanging in there, Paul.
Yeah, you win the Public Service Award for tonight.
And Jenny left.
Council. Any further business, council, anyone would like to discuss?
I've got a couple things, but.
Go ahead, Jim.
No, I'll defer to you first.
I was just following up with sort of what Paul was saying. I mean, we're walking very narrow cliff here, trying to figure out how to deliver the nourishment without, there's a lot of competing priorities, and having you comment and appreciate the difficulty of it means a lot. And more than that is I was reading a lot of those emails, and it did seem like, you know what, we just don't need to do this. And if you don't want an MSD, maybe we just don't need to do the project. And that was the way it was heading for me personally over the last several months. And we've crossed that hurdle. And now, Paul, I mean, appreciate. Let's have a conversation about tax rates. I mean, that's the next hurdle for all of us. So it's been tough, and I know you all have shared it. So.
Thank you, Matt.
I've got 3 items real quick I want to mention. One of them is I did a 2-hour webinar or Zoom meeting, whatever it's called, on ADA accessibility for municipalities today. It's a subject that I have to live in. It's a world I have to live in sometimes. So I went ahead and took advantage of that through the League of Municipalities there. But the second thing I wanted to mention is that one of the volunteer activities I'm often involved in is Room at the Inn, and they're making efforts to outreach to the homeless population out here year round. So they're just getting off the ground on that, but it sounds like some promising things to help folks out, the working poor out here, so to speak. And the third and final thing I wanted to mention is that I have asked for, and hopefully we can have on the agenda for our next meeting, a discussion about pedestrian safety. It's something that I think has really kind of hit us all pretty squarely here recently, but this is not a knee-jerk reaction to the recent fatality out on NC 12. There have been other accidents, and ultimately at our next meeting, I'd like to make a case for lowering the speed limit on NC 12 to 35 mile an hour year round. We've got too many crosswalks. That would put it in line with handling crosswalks and pedestrians the same as it's done elsewhere out here on the Outer Banks. But anyway, that's the third item I had for council comments. We'll come out with a write-up to all council members and staff with a write-up that are my thoughts that hopefully will jumpstart a conversation about it.
Thank you, Jim. Leo?
I just want to give an update on the occupancy tax collections for February. For the February, they were up 148%. The current year to date is up 162%. Big question is, how long can that be sustained? So enjoy it while we got our day in the sun.
It hasn't been enjoyable.
Well, and there's a big concern, as some of these homes change, the number available in the rental pool is projected to decline, which will impact that number. Meal collections, we're finally making a recovery there. February was up 4%, and for the current year to date, which is January, February, is up 8%. So we're making some progress there because it was really bad last March, April, and all the way around until about September. So that's been improving since then. And that's all I got.
Thank you, Leo. Elizabeth?
I know we've only been here like 6 or 8 or 10 hours, but very quick. I actually wanted to speak about our fire department because I was thinking about it, and then Chief Ed did his thing with his helmets, and I thought I didn't want to say it then, so I'm going to say it now. I think about those the guys that have to put all that gear on when it's hot, which is going to get even hotter than it was today. I also want to talk to our law enforcement because they deal with the same thing. They got to go out with a lot of equipment on in this heat. And we have a lot more people here, y'all. We have a lot more people here. So I really think that we've taken this as locals. We take the fact that we get a break, from all the folks, but we're not really getting that break. And they're here. So to back up on Jim's concern about pedestrian safety, I would add bicycle and pedestrian safety. I think we all have to do our part. I really do. It's imperative that we pay attention, especially when we're in a vehicle, because if you put a vehicle and a person in a bicycle, you know who's going to win that situation. So, but to summarize, thank you to our fire department. Thank you to our law enforcement personnel. Appreciate all that you do, especially when we have so many people here and when it's going to get really hot. So thank you. That's it.
I'm just going to close by saying thank you to all of you up here on this podium with me for your support tonight and the job you did and that homework you did before this meeting started. I want to thank you very much for your efforts. That's all I have, folks. I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Take a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.
Matt's
Thank you.
staying an extra 10 minutes.
Yeah, stay longer.
Whew.